Hey guys, welcome to our video. So in our today's video, we're going to talk about one of the most demanded courses when it comes to website development, and that is the course of JavaScript. So now in our today's video, we're going to talk about the uses of JavaScript. Why do you need to learn JavaScript? What can you achieve by using JavaScript in website development? What significance does it hold? How important is it? And what are the applications of JavaScript? Where can it be used other than website development as well, and what will be the outcomes for this course? So we're going to talk about all of that in our video. So without wasting any further time, let's begin. So the languages that you have been learning before, such as the HTML and CSS, are not particularly programming languages. They are basically markup languages. So JavaScript is now a client-side programming language. This is basically a proper general programming language such as C++, Python, and C# and all of those languages that are basically used for programming. Now JavaScript is very much similar to these languages. It is logic-based programming languages, and it is used for the client-side programming. Now there are two types of programming: client-side programming and server-side programming. So the client-side is basically the front-end programming, that is basically whatever displays on the screen, and server-side is the back-end programming. That means that whatever processing is basically going on behind the screen, what you as a user cannot see. So JavaScript is basically a client-side programming languages, but it is not basically limited to this. We will see later in the video that how can you, with just a little bit of iterations, use JavaScript for server-side programming language as well. You can use it for server-side programming, back-end programming. So now if we talk about the front-end part of the JavaScript, then it is basically very useful to add features to your website, increase the functionality of your website. Basically, to enhance the user's experience on your website, you use JavaScript to basically add all the features and functionalities to your website. You can basically link buttons in your website using JavaScript. You can basically create some very good graphical GUI effects using JavaScript, and also you can use all of that to increase the interactivity on your website, so the users can basically interact with your website. They can have a better experience on your website. So all of that basically is done through JavaScript. Now JavaScript is basically, if we talk about some of the uses of JavaScript, then it is basically used to enhance the functionality and add features to our websites, as we discussed earlier. So for example, you can basically, using JavaScript, code a button to perform a specific task, whatever you want it to perform. Some of the tasks may be like adding a dark mode effect to your website using the JavaScript function. So this will, what will it do? It will add a feature to your website. This will increase the basically the user's experience on your website. Collectively, all of this is gonna make things better. Now a lot of that is basically also related to, a lot of the uses of JavaScript are also related to animations and GUI visual effects. Now GUI means graphical user interface. So you can add, basically you can make the experience of the website in a whole. Basically you can make a website work smoother. You can add some visual effects to them, such as the parallax effect and whatnot, and along with that you can also add animations into your website, and also you can add and import some 3D models in your website. Now all of that is going to be discussed thoroughly throughout the course. How can you achieve all of these effects? How can you use them? So this will basically help you overall to enhance a user's experience, make user's experience better on your website. So now let's talk about what will you learn throughout the course. What are we going to learn throughout the courses? What are we going to achieve through the course? What knowledge will you have by the end of this course? So just to name a few things, one of the things that we will be learning is going to be how to add client-side validation. So now this is very important when it comes to website development, that you need to add checks, you need to add validations in a website. So how can you do that? How can you validate a website? So validation means basically adding checks. So what are these checks? So for example, using HTML forms, you ask for a number of some user. So user enters a number, and now you want to check that does the number belong to the user who entered it. So all of those validations are added using JavaScript. Now if a user enters an email, and if you want to check that does the email exist or not, that is also done through validations using JavaScript. Not only that, now along with that you can also create alert boxes on your website. So what are these alert boxes? So on the top of a website, you might sometimes see some permission that the website asks you, for example, accepting the cookies, or do you want to continue, and stuff like that, that appears in a checkbox on the top basically. So all of those boxes are created using JavaScript. All of that functionality, all of those features are basically added using JavaScript, and we're going to learn how to do that. How can you make them? Now along with that, you can also program buttons on your website to perform a specific task that you want to add in your website, or any feature that you want a button to basically perform. Like for example, like we talked about the dark mode. So a lot of websites now have a dark mode. Then you can basically add a button that will, when you click the button, you will toggle a dark mode. So this is just an example of the features that you can add using the programming the buttons on according to your own needs, your own specifications. So you can basically customize a task, you can basically specify a task that a button will perform. So moving on, now we will also be learning how can you basically enhance the look and feel of a website. So JavaScript is not only used for functionality purposes, feature purposes, but also, like we talked about, it is used to add animation, increase the graphical user interface, enhance all of those things as well, add some basically animations that will help to make the experience of the website a lot more smoother. So all of that can be achieved using JavaScript. So JavaScript is going to help you tremendously to increase the look and the feel of your website. We're going to learn how to do that. How is JavaScript helping us doing that? So now you're going to also learn about functions in JavaScript. So JavaScript basically has some functions that can be used, specifically built to add some features in your website. So we're going to learn about all of those functions, such as the alert function that basically creates an alert box for you, and then you specify what the alert box does, and you get some information out of it, and then we process the information. So all of those functions basically that the JavaScript offers us, and how can you basically create your own function as well. So all of that is going to be covered throughout the courses. Now moving on, you will also be learning about the statement and the structure of the JavaScript. So now you will know how to basically add some statements. Statements are basically how can you display something using JavaScript on the screen. What statements do you require in order to do that? You will also be learning about the if statement, switch statement. So things like this, these are going to help basically us to basically process information that the user provides us, and basically give him a result according to that information that he provided us. Now along with that, we're going to also be learning about loops in JavaScript. So now this is one of the most important things when it comes to JavaScript, that structures and loops. Now as we talked about that, we're going to use the if structure, if else structures, the switch statements, and along with that, loops. So loops are basically a repetition of a statement. So there are two kinds of loops, while loops and for loops, and then we have the nested loops. So we're going to look into that how can you use a while loop, how can you use a for loop, and what are nested loops, and then we're going to see how can you use them in a website, what function are they going to perform. So then you're going to also learn how to add JavaScript libraries. So what are we going to do is basically you can import some JavaScript libraries that are going to help you add some features in your website. Like for example, you will be able to add some 3D models in your website, some particular animation in your website. You're going to be able to add some third-party libraries that are basically created by people. You can use them in your websites as well. You can add some plugins in your website. So all of that is basically we will be covering throughout the course. How can you do that? How can you use all of these features in JavaScript, and what are basically the purpose of all these things? So everything it will be covered in our courses. Now let's talk about some of the benefits of learning JavaScript. So now JavaScript is basically your first step into the world of programming. If you haven't basically studied any programming language before, and if this is your first hands-on experience, then basically this will help you understand all general purpose, all logic-based programming languages. Now once you learn any programming language in general, any logic-based programming languages, basically the logic is going to remain same for all the other programming languages. So this is going to help you understand those languages as well. So once after learning JavaScript, you try to move towards Python, C++, or some other programming general purpose programming language, it's going to be a lot more easier for you to understand, since the logic for all programming languages is exactly the same. Now along with with that, JavaScript is basically one of the most demanded languages of 2020. So if you search on Google for top 10 programming languages, JavaScript is surely gonna appear over there. So this is basically one of the most demanded languages because it has diversified over the years so much that now the users of JavaScript have increased enormously. The applications in which the JavaScript is being used now has increased enormously. So in a while we will also discuss that what are those applications and how is JavaScript being used over there. Now, JavaScript is basically going to open the gateway towards the world of development for you. Now, JavaScript being so much diversified now is being used in application development, in a lot of system development, software development, which I'm going to discuss about in a while once we move towards the frameworks. So all of that is going to basically open a gateway towards the world of development. Now, apart from the website application development, JavaScript will help you develop mobile applications, basically desktop applications, VR applications, that is virtual reality, and basically which is the future now, and a lot of other developments as well. All of that can be achieved using JavaScript. Now, you will be able to learn about JavaScript oriented frameworks. So JavaScript oriented framework, one of the most famous framework is basically the Node.js that is used for the backend development. You must have heard about it. It is quite famous, and that is basically used to create basically dynamic website or server side development. So Node.js is basically more or less the same as JavaScript, just with a little bit of iterations. The language is pretty much the same. The logic is pretty much the same. So if you have the knowledge about JavaScript, you can very easily move towards Node.js and learn that. Now, along with that, there is another framework that is basically called the Electron. Now, Electron framework is basically used for web application development and also basically desktop application development. So that framework is going to help you create website application and desktop applications using JavaScript. Now, along with that, you have basically React.js. So now this framework is basically used to develop web and mobile application development. All of that is basically related to JavaScript. The language being used over there is JavaScript. So if you have the knowledge of JavaScript, you can move towards that as well. And also you can basically move towards React Native. So now React Native is basically specifically built for Android development and iOS development. This software, this framework also requires JavaScript knowledge. So if you have the JavaScript knowledge, you can move towards it as well. Now also you can basically, one of the biggest features now, one of the biggest users of JavaScript and why you should be learning JavaScript is gonna be for React VR. Now this is a new framework which is used for virtual reality development. So this is going to help you basically create virtual applications, virtual reality applications, and basically get yourself into virtual reality development. And along with that, you're going to be able to basically create augmented reality applications and development. You can move towards as well using JavaScript. Now JavaScript is basically being used in a lot of developments, in general software developments, application developments, like we discussed. So learning JavaScript, learning this language is gonna open the gateways towards all of that development. Now, if we talk about the outcomes of basically this course, then you will be very much able to, after learning this course and with the knowledge of HTML and CSS that you have, you can basically start a career in front-end development. Now, I'm not particularly talking about website development, but in general front-end application developments using JavaScript, like we talked about in desktop development and a lot of other developments. So this language is going to help you tremendously achieve your goals towards the development. Now it's going to open a lot of gateways towards the application for virtual reality development and also for augmented reality development. That is basically the future now, and this is going to basically open gateways towards those developments as well. Now along with that, you will be able to add third-party libraries. Now in your website, sometimes you need the third-party libraries to add a particular feature, to import some particular models, and basically to just add features that are created by some developers and that are posted on the internet. So you can basically use some libraries that are created by people and import them in your website, and that is just going to help you add more features to your website, make it feature rich. Now along with that, like we discussed earlier, you will be very much able to import a 3D model basically, or an animation model that you have created. If you're a graphic designer or you have something like that that you want to basically include in your website, you can do that very easily using JavaScript. And along with that, you will be able to pursue a career in website development. Now if you only want to basically pursue a career in website development, in front-end development, now with the knowledge of HTML, the knowledge of CSS, and the knowledge of JavaScript, you have all the knowledge that is required to now start a career in website development. Particularly, you will be very much able to not only create and design a website, but also add features and functionality into that website and make it a lot more interactive. And you can basically come up with a lot of good looking website, which will basically gonna help you basically pursue a career in this field as well. Now, if we talk about the summary of the entire thing that we just talked about, then the first step, that's going to be learning JavaScript. You're going to learn all the functionalities of the features of the JavaScript. You're going to learn how to add a script in a website. How can you basically, what is the syntax of a JavaScript? How does it work? How you will understand all of that through our course. The second step is going to be basically, which is the most important and the critical step, is going to be practicing and flourishing your skills. So this will be ensured throughout the course, because we will be providing you assignments to work on, and that will basically help you practice your skills, and that will also help us ensure your learning. We can then make sure that you are practicing and you're flourishing your skills. And the third step is finally going to be the fruit of the entire thing, and that is going to be, you will be able to create amazing websites. And not only that, but you will have endless career opportunities when it comes to development. So as we discussed, that JavaScript has a broad scope in terms of website development, and also apart from website development, there are a lot of career opportunities that you can opt after learning this course. So guys, I really hope that this video gave you a really good image about what will you be able to achieve after learning this course, how much you will be able to gain from it, and how much benefit you will have after learning this course. So this was just the tip of the iceberg. There are just a lot of features, a lot of applications of JavaScript which are basically related to website development, and which we will be covering throughout our course. And we will be guiding you how can you use all of this knowledge apart from website development as well. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your patience, guys, and I will see you in the next one.